Seeing unusual connections and unconventional patterns. When thinking, we often divide the whole into parts. That is, think about separate things, while missing the whole. It is ironic that we accuse autistic individuals of not seeing the forest behind the trees, while categorizing and classifying parts of the forest in our minds all the time and losing the big picture of our reality. That is why we are often bewildered. The verbal thinking of non-autistic individuals. Autistic thinking is mostly sensory perceptual. When a non-verbal person thinks, there are no words going through his mind, only sensor impressions, such as visual images, sounds, smells, taste, and touch sensations. The closest analogy is remembering a dream. Gelernter writes about the cognitive spectrum that is changing its version every day. The most analytical one is when we are most awake. As we grow less awake, our thinking becomes more concrete, and when we start to fall asleep, we begin to free, associate, and finally reach the wholly non-logical, high concrete type of thought we call dreaming. In terms of development, we trace out the cognitive spectrum in reverse. Babies and children think concretely. As they grow up, their thinking becomes more analytical. Conversely, in autism, the quality of visual thinking may depend on the state the person is in, and even the time of day. For instance, thought images are clearer and most detailed when the person is drifting off to sleep. Subconscious thinking. Temple-Grandin hypothesis that in most people language covers up the primary sensory-based thinking that humans share with animals. Sensory-based thinking is subconscious in most people, while those like Temple-Grandin think with the primary sensory-based subconscious areas of the brain. When well developed, this brings certain advantages not available to others. For example, so-called normal people have difficulty in conceptualizing multidimensional processes, which can be linked to unconscious processes operating in a space of a higher number of dimensions than that of our perceptions and conscious thinking. By distinguishing between subconscious and conscious perceptual processing, we can distinguish between conscious and subconscious types of intelligence, the latter with little conscious awareness, called unknown knowing. They roughly correspond to Bergson's definitions of intellect and intuition, or intellectual sympathy, with intellect being external, looking on reality as different from life, but in intellectual sympathy, one places oneself within an object in order to coincide with what is unique in it and consequently inexpressible. Bergson points out that analysis reduces the object to already known elements that are common to it and all other objects. Analysis can be seen as a translation into symbols and expresses a thing as a function of something other than itself. Unlike intellectual sympathy, intuition, that leads to the inwardness of life, intellect goes all round life, drawing it into itself instead of entering it. Although everyone is predisposed to spirituality, some people and groups of people seem to be more spiritually aware or gifted than others. Recent research has shown that children are more spiritual because they are not yet restricted with cultural constructs. Children and animals, as purest of innocence, often perceive spiritual experiences only because they haven't yet been conditioned. Growing up, however, most of them lose or forget their ability. At times of personal tragedy, for example loss of someone they love, or stress, some individuals are more open to these experiences. It has been noticed that some people with what was once known as a mental deficiency or mental illness have profound spiritual and religious awareness. People with temporal lobe epilepsy have strong emotional and déjà vu experiences. But I don't know how many times I have watched it. I love this movie. It is so beautiful and so innocent. Yeah, and I totally understand these stages. So here, Francesco is traumatized from war, then he goes through this transformation, and it's some kind of ego dissolution, and he comes out of it completely changed. He finds this inner peace. Being holistic in nature, a deep sense of the whole, a sense of unity or oneness with everything, connectedness, relationality. Spirituality is something biologically built into the human species, a holistic awareness of reality which is potentially to be found in every human being. It is reflected in a heightened awareness or attentiveness, connectedness, relational consciousness, i.e., a holistic awareness of one's relationship with material world, with other humans, with oneself, and with God. That constitutes spiritual awareness. People think he has gone nuts, but actually this is total nature connectedness, being in the moment, when his way of attending shifts into being completely present. What Saint Francis does here is merging with that rock, and if he had an autism diagnosis, he would consider this as so-called autistic behavior. But all that is a shift in attending to things, as Ian McGilchrist describes in his many presentations. Connecting with this rock, with nature, and just be. It's a being state. And Claire has known him before, when he was all worldly and arrogant. But now he sees the things differently, and she recognizes that in him because she has it too in some way. And she tells him that now he's actually more normal than he was before. It's a beautiful scene because here it is complete absence of sexual lust. It is completely innocent. This is the heart-centered being state where there is no sexual lust. There is just connectedness between souls, between hearts. People think of reality as some sort of guarantee they can rely on. Yet, from the earliest age I can remember, I found my only dependable security in losing all awareness of the things considered real. In doing this, I was able to lose all sense of self. Yet, this is the strategy said to be the highest stage of meditation, indulged in to achieve inner peace and tranquility. Why should it not be interpreted as such for autistic people? Unlike non-autistic people, most of whom are conditioned out of spiritual experiences soon after they start school, for some autistic individuals, spiritual reality is always part of their lives. My world was a spiritual body. It had been my home, myself, my life, my entire system of making sense of that bastard place called the world. Writes Donna Williams, 1999, page 7. What makes autistic individuals more open to spiritual experiences is their sensitivities, sensory, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual. Exactly. Think less, at least, and sense more.